Alright, so this is going to be another Sunday morning session, and today I'm listening to some Pärt. I had an uncle send me a few albums of his music around the time I started composing, when I was like 17, 18. And that was his sort of like idea of what my composition sounded like at the time and what I should be composing. And then years later in my master's, I was in a composition seminar, and we actually spent a whole day on Pärt. So all the scores I have are from that class. So we looked at 4 pieces of his. I think we were assigned to study them over the course of a week, and then we met together and talked about them. We looked at Credo, which is a piece of his that was written before his minimalist style, and it has some elements that are like atonal or 12 tone, but it was very clean in other ways, and sort of reminded me of Lutoslawski. And then we looked at Violin, which is a very short piano piece he wrote, which sort of marks the beginning of his Tintinnabuli style. And we looked at Fratres, which will be the piece we're looking at today, and one of his later sacred minimalist pieces, the Miserere, which is like a piece for organ and small ensemble and choir. So this was sort of like a retrospective of Pärt's career, and it gave me a sense of what he did throughout his life. Whereas the stuff that my like musician uncle had shared with me was really just like the hits, an album of pieces that Pärt is really known for that were all written around the same time, and this was one of them. Fratres is originally for violin and piano, but it's been arranged for all kinds of ensembles. Like, here are the versions: chamber orchestra. I think that's a pretty famous one. Multiple cellos, string quartet, winds and percussion octet, string and percussion orchestra, band of metal instruments, like Baroque ensemble, saxophone quartet. The violin and piano one is the original, I think. I guess the chamber orchestra one is the original, but so I'm mistaken. But violin and piano is one of the most popular versions. There's a version for cello and version for viola, a version with trombone as the soloist. This is also a really popular one with the violin soloist, string orchestra, and percussion. And it is an insanely successful piece. It's been used in all of these films. One of the more famous examples is it was in There Will Be Blood. Looking at this today in this version, I'm going to try and dissect what makes it sound the way it sounds, and try to give sort of a composer's perspective. Like, if you wanted to copy this style, how would you copy it? This is what the first page of the score looks like. It's arpeggiando figures on the violin, just going up and down with these chords, and it goes on for quite a long time. Throughout, I think it has an open E, so the high E is open the whole time. Pretty frequently there's an open A or an open D in the chord as well. I guess towards the end here you have a high E instead of the lower one, but there's like an E drone throughout the entire solo. So yeah, let's have a listen. If you're not familiar with this work, you've probably heard it before, you just don't know it. Alright, so hopefully you took the time to listen to the piece, and hopefully you picked the correct version for violin and piano. This performance that I ended up listening to was Anne Akiko Myers as the violinist and pianist Akira Eguchi. And this recording, just the YouTube video alone, has like 36,000 views, so incredibly popular piece. If you aren't familiar with the Tintinnabuli style of Arvo Pärt, his whole conception for it was he was going to write modal music which followed very strict rules, but not the rules of counterpoint from the Middle Ages or the Renaissance, but his own rules in that he sort of just made up, but they were informed by rules of the past. So the first thing he did was think about the difference between writing in step, like voices that move by step and voices that move by leap. And his sort of approach is, in any of his pieces in this style, at any point there's going to be one voice that is moving by step and one voice that is leaping. And the voice moving by step is carrying a melody of some sort, something that you're supposed to sing along to. And the voice moving by leap is accompanying it. And almost always it's even more restricted than the voice that's moving by step. So the voice moving by leap is usually just a chord. It's leaping between notes of a chord, and those notes can be used to harmonize the line. And it sounds very restrictive, but in practice there's a lot that you could do with it. You can get a lot of rich harmonies and dissonances, and the approach is entirely melodic. It's not a harmonic system. So for example, this piece is like a theme and variations on a melody, and the melody is very simple. You can even see it in the last variation here. You start on C sharp and you traverse this scale, which is all white keys, let's say, except for C sharp and B flat, and you go down a step and then you approach the same C sharp from a step above. Then you go down 2 steps, and then you approach it from 2 steps above. 3 steps, 3 steps. And then instead of continuing that pattern, you start at the same C sharp, but you go up a step and then approach it from below. And then you just continue the same pattern. So it's, as far as melodies go, it's extremely simple, and it follows its own sort of like minimalistic rules. And if you look at the other voices, they're sort of leaping between notes of an A minor chord, right? E, C, A, E, E, C, A, E. And I think one of the things that makes this piece so powerful, what makes it work really well, is the leaping voice, let's say, has C naturals in it, but the voice moving by step has C sharp in it. So you get all kinds of like dissonances between the two voices that are going on, and there's a little bit of modal mixture. It's unclear what the mode is exactly. So, and you can see here that it's not like one instrument or one voice is always playing one part. In this last variation, the violin plays along with the melody, like doubling a couple octaves up, and then in between that doubling, they play notes of the A minor chord, right? So the piano has multiple voices, which each voice is strictly one or the other, but the violin has a single voice which is alternating the like stuff moving by step, and then the A minor chord, stuff moving by step, A minor chord. So it's pretty flexible, like similar to like Renaissance or Baroque music. What you define as a voice and what you define as like the melody or the accompaniment is very loose and not dependent on instrumentation. I got really technical today. I don't usually do that with a piece, but Part's music is so simple that you can actually talk about it technically in a very short amount of time and like basically describe the whole piece. Like the variations are certainly interesting in this, and this last one is far from my favorite variation. Um, my favorite variation would be like the climactic one with the uh, you know, that with the open A and the open E offbeats. You know, those details aren't what define the piece. What defines the piece is this style that Pärt came up with. So, and I know I'm probably not the only person to explain this piece or use it pedagogically, but that's how it was taught to me, honestly. Like in this seminar I was explaining earlier, this took up the majority of the seminar because it's a really good example of his style, and you can get the gist of it very well from this version of the piece specifically. As for like a piece of violin and piano repertoire, it's definitely a crowd pleaser. There's a lot of interesting techniques in the violin, which make this one of the best versions. I don't think it works as well on cello. I also tried listening to the trombone version once, and it's not as successful. I don't know why he decided to do that one, but yeah, if you're going to listen to a version, I would say this one or the other one with the violin soloist and string orchestra. That's a good one. Tomorrow we're going to be moving on to, I can't remember what piece. I think it might be a piece by Salvatore Sciarrino. Yeah, we're looking at a piece by Sciarrino, and I'm not too familiar with this piece of his, but he's written a lot of extremely difficult and complex piano music and also violin solo music. So I'm interested to see the two mediums come together in this piece, which I think is around 10 minutes long as well. So yeah, that's that one.